Hi, I'm John Wilson, director of the Timken Museum of Art, and I want to share with you one of the most popular paintings in the museum, Rembrandt's St. Bartholomew, painted in 1657. It's always been called St. Bartholomew because of the knife that he's holding, but there's no real documentation that this is St. Bartholomew. Rembrandt's well known for his extraordinary ways of rendering the human condition and human experiences that we've all had. So you have a knife, you've got a man with a deeply furrowed brow who's looking out of the picture in some sort of concerned, worried, preoccupied fashion. And that all put together turns into a reading iconographically as this must be St. Bartholomew. Here we have not only the sort of human characterization, we have this dramatic light as well that shines on his temple and hiding one side of his face in shadow. We have a beautiful cuff of white that's also picking up the light. We have the glint of the blade of the knife with some rich browns and reds and the figure painted and also some of the bright whites. It's an incredibly dramatic picture, but at the same time one that just speaks of an extraordinary human emotion. With this one, we're looking at a rather gorgeous and detailed carnation, which she's holding. These excellently drawn and rendered bows and ribbons, pearls, hair, and she gives you this rather haughty expression as she's greeting us. We're really not supposed to get very much more out of this about the fact that this is a very important young lady. Her name is Mary Villiers, and she was the daughter of a British nobleman. She is engaged and married to Lord Sherborne, sort of a non-entity now. He was a well-known aristocrat in those days. In the 1630s, and he died, and so she's sort of emerging from mourning here with these black bows on her dress. Later she marries the Duke of Lennox and Richmond, who was also painted by Van Dyck. This picture in particular has on the back of the canvas a cipher, which is the sort of monogram of Charles I of England. And this picture we know was given to Charles I probably by Mary Villiers' father, who was one of Charles I's favorites. It was in the collection until it was sold probably during the interregnum when Cromwell was ruling England. This painting by Peter Bruegel the Elder is one of the earliest landscape paintings that we'll see. This painting dates from 1557. He'd gone to Italy in the early 1550s, and obviously to get there from what's now Belgium, you cross the Alps. We know he made a lot of sketches of drawings of the mountains. The idea of a landscape that's just simply there for the pleasure of looking at nature was so totally foreign to somebody in 16th century Europe that you have to give these things some sort of tag. And what we have here is a farmer throwing seeds on the ground. He's sowing, which would give you, much in the way like we saw with St. Bartholomew, an idea that this might be some sort of religious picture. So the man sowing the seed suggests that it might be the parable of the sower. And indeed, down here, in tiny little figures here on the edge of the water, is indeed Christ preaching. So we do understand that this is a landscape with the parable of the sower. Well, this painting by Claude Lorrain, who was a Frenchman in the 17th century, takes what Peter Bruegel was doing and essentially codifies it for the next several centuries in terms of painting landscape. Claude is somebody who, like Bruegel, took specific things, but actually turned them into what looks like totally idealized and beautiful. We look at these and say, I think I've been there, but at the same time, you can't actually put your finger on it. Claude has taken all the things that we think of in a landscape, a strong foreground, a middle ground, and a background, with all these wonderful little ways of drawing your eye in between each of those sections, and then made a really harmonious whole out of it. Painting landscape in this way goes through not only the 17th century, throughout the 18th century, throughout the 19th century, even into Impressionism and early modernism as the core, as the basis for how one paints a landscape. It really isn't until the emergence of Japanese prints on a widespread scale at the end of the 19th century in France do we start thinking of landscape in an entirely different way. One of the great things about the Timken is that in an hour, you've seen some of the great masterpieces of European and American art, and you've been able to spend a great deal of time with them in a way to get to know them well.